What is up, Avalanche House? You guys having a good time? Come on, you can do better than that. Oh my God, when we started planning this event, it was right when the market started to get bearish, and we were like, are we gonna still do this thing? You know, and I think we decided to keep doing it. I hope you agree it was a good decision. Good decision, yeah? No? You don't sound sure. A lot of people have been asking me today, why Formula E? And why are you guys involved with Andretti? So I wanted to just, this is not something we were planning to talk about, but I felt like it'd be important. Hey, Robbie, zip it, zip it. And so I wanted to provide a little bit of context about how we got caught up in this whole thing and why we're doing this. And I hope this is helpful for you guys. But you know, when we started to think about how do you construct a brand, how do you build a brand, and how do you introduce a new brand to the world, we started thinking about how we go beyond what happens in our industry a lot. Everybody spends so much time talking to the prefrontal cortex and making us think about things, and we don't spend enough time building a community. It doesn't get built up here. It gets built in here, and it gets built here, right? So that's why we like to feed you guys. And we want to feed your brain, but we also want to feed your heart and give you something to care about. We looked at our community, and no disrespect to the ladies, we're trying to change the equation here a little bit, but most of the people in crypto and blockchain are males 20 to 35. So we started to think about how we could build a relationship with them outside of, you know, the heady stuff that goes on in crypto. We started to think about the things that the community cares about. And we looked at sport. Obviously, the most popular sport in the world is, any guesses? Yeah, okay, great. But what's the brand connection to blockchain? It's loose. It's hard to make, right? So we kept going down the list. And you find that very soon you get to motorsports. And when we started to look at motorsports, we started to look at what made sense for us, not just as a blockchain company, but as Avalanche. And we found Formula E. Formula E is about speed, it's about science, and it's about sustainability. And that's what Avalanche is really about. Not speed at all costs, but high performance consistently in a way that is friendly to Mother Earth. And so the value system of Formula E is something that really stuck with us. So we started to look for opportunities, and we were very fortunate to find the Andretti family. And I say family, it's a business, but it's also a family. And it reminded us a lot of what we see in Avalanche and the community that we have built. As I speak to people that have been here today and I ask them why you're here and why you're a part of the Avalanche community, it always comes down to, yes, they talk about the tech and they want to come and hear Pog and everybody else talk about the technology, but they talk a lot about community. And they say, Avalanche just has such a great community. It's welcoming. Eamon here, how old are you, Eamon?
16.
Tell the audience.
16.
And you came here today with your friends and your dad, right? Why did you come here?
Because Avalanche is a home for everyone, and it's honestly one of the best spaces in crypto.
Okay. He said it, and that's what we're trying to do here, guys. We're building community, and community happens on the blockchain, but it also happens off the chain in places like this. All right, so I could go on and on about it, but that's what we're doing here. That's why we're in this partnership. And I'll tell you that since we started this partnership, our first race was in Saudi Arabia. People in Saudi Arabia are talking about Avalanche today, and they wouldn't have otherwise been doing that. Since January until now, it's July, we've raced in Saudi Arabia, Mexico City, Rome, Monaco, Marrakesh, what am I forgetting? Berlin, right? Jakarta. There are people all over the world. In fact, we counted them, and it was something close to 70 million. I think it's 67 million people now have seen the Avalanche brand the same way that you saw and experienced it today. They know what the red and white is, and they know who we are, they know who you are, because we're a community. So that's what we're doing here. I'm going to stop because I'll cry if I don't. So, if you're passionate about the community like I am and like these guys are, I want you to give a big round of applause for the guys that I'm going to bring up on stage. The one and only, I don't even know racing well enough to mention all the stats, but this is one of the most winningest drivers in the history of motorsports in North America and in the world, Mark Andretti. Welcome, sir. All right. Next up, team principal Roger Griffith. There are many difficult jobs in motorsports. This is probably one of the hardest outside of driving. It's managing and leading the team Roger led Honda Performance Development for many years. He's an engineer, and he has spent many a night talking to Pog about how we can use blockchain to make cars go faster. We don't have an answer yet, but we're going to keep trying to find out. So welcome on stage, please, Roger Griffith. And because we like to switch things up on the fly over here, you guys have already seen him, but you know him and you love him. I said, hey, John, you want to come up and do a panel with us? He said, sure. He has no idea what we're going to talk about, but we'll figure it out. Come on up, John Woo. All right, fellas, let's sit down and chat a little bit. We're going to keep it tight, guys. We know it's the end of the day. We know that great music out there. By the way, how many people in this room know that the last DJ to play that set is also our very own Kyle Deneen, head of content and social? If you guys didn't know this, he's actually opened up for some pretty big names in Coachella. So, you know, next time you're out there, keep an eye out for the man. Can I say your name? Can I tell them the Time Machine Deneen? Does anybody know that? Okay. Anyway. Time Machine Deneen is here. So we're going to keep it short. We're just going to have a few discussions. Then at the end, if you guys are up for it, is Ollie and Jake back there? Oliver, where's Jake? Formula E drivers, guys. Welcome them to the party. So at the end, we'll bring them up and we can do an AMA. You can ask them anything about the race. But before that, let's get started. Michael, let's talk a little bit about Formula E. You guys are, how many series are you racing globally now? Like seven, maybe?
7, yeah.
7 series
At
globally.
the moment.
All right. Hopefully adding one more fairly soon.
We're working on it.
Working on it. All right, so tell us a little bit about why Formula E. How long have you guys been involved? Why did you get involved? And what does it mean to Andretti Autosport?
Well, we got involved. Actually, we were one of the first teams to sign up. For us, we thought it was a great opportunity to branch out with our brand, especially internationally. And with the new technology, you know, it was, this was like about 8 years ago now, and the electric technology was pretty much just starting out, and for us, it's been great to experience the growth of the technology and be a part of it. You know, a lot of the things that we're doing in our race cars now are going to make it to the road cars. It's helping, speed up the technology so it's been great for us. It's a very, very competitive series. It's as high level as you can get in racing. The teams and the drivers are some of the best in the world. So, for us, it's been awesome for our brand, and it's been great to be involved.
Such a technical sport. Like you said something that made me, and I've been spewing this stat for a while now today, so if I mentioned it to you before, forgive me if you're hearing it again. But if you look at the Monaco Grand Prix that raced this year in F1, basically the way that the grid started is how they finished the race. I think there was one pass in the whole race. In Formula E, on the same track, they had 65 passes during the race. So if you spend any time in this room, yeah, it's crazy, right? Spend any time in this room today watching the race, you'll notice it's super competitive. And there's so much that happens. Later on, we'll talk to drivers about how much is actually driving versus just, figuring out how to run the computer. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that later. Speaking of the technology, Raj, let's talk a little bit about how this series is different from traditional motorsports. And just by show of hands, how many motorsports fans in the room here? Better be a lot. Okay, great. There's a bunch. How is this different? How is Formula E different?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having us here. We're super proud to be out here racing in New York and to be partnered with Avalanche. I think one of the key things, and for all of the petrol heads out there, if you look at Formula One, it's a horsepower race. So it's who's got the most horsepower, who's got the most money. Formula E is a different approach. It's an efficiency race. So we all have the same amount of power, but it's all about how we use it. It's how we deploy it. And I think that has a much closer connection to the road cars out there. It's much more relevant to what the OEMs are doing, and these are the brands that are being represented in Formula E with with Porsche, with Jaguar, with BMW and Audi in the past. So I think that's a closer connection to the real world than perhaps what Formula One is, which is all about how much technology can you kind of exploit, and so I think we have something unique here in Formula E.
Incredible. But John, this was your first Formula E race, right?
That's right.
And for many, how many here, first Formula E race? For most of us, really. So let's talk about that. Like, what was your experience as a fan? And then maybe you could also flip the table and talk about your experience being involved in this series as a, as the president of Ava Labs. That's not doing something that, first for us, like everything else, but also a first in the industry, really.
Well, first of all, thank you, Michael and Roger and the whole Andretti team and Oliver and Jake back there. I mean, it's been a great experience working with you guys. As Devin said earlier, what Formula E and your team represents in terms of science, which we always talk about innovation at Ava Labs and for Avalanche, but also the speed, we're the fastest chain, and also, it's sustainable, and we care a lot about that. There's another similarity that you didn't talk about, but only because I sat there and talked with you guys and really watched things, that I realized how much changes in this sport in the last 8-9 years. Just 3 or 4 years ago, you had to have 2 batteries, 2 cars, because you couldn't make it through one race with 1 car. So you're constantly iterating. Things are getting better. You're going from 1,800 tons to now 1,600 tons in the very near future. And when you look at the drivers, the great thing was, like, when they came in yesterday from practicing, you instantly put down a computer screen, plugged it into their cars, and they're in real time analyzing how they turned and how far, how tight, and how can they optimize things. So it's just like us. We're constantly iterating. We're a hyper growth company in a hyper growth industry, and you guys are in the same way. And it takes a lot of, besides know-how, but a lot of sharp, decisive decision making, literally really quickly, and you guys are all great at that. So there's a lot of similarities that you don't realize until you're actually knee deep into it.
It really is a lot more technical than many other sports. Yeah, it's a really good point. Michael, coming back to you, speaking of, we spoke about similarities, let's talk a little bit about the differences. How long have you been in motorsports? Don't answer that. A while. All right. For such a young man.
Thank you. Yeah, right, young man. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how this partnership, we have no way of knowing whether this is how you do it, but talk a little bit about how this partnership is maybe similar to partnerships that you've seen with other brands through your time, and maybe how it's a little different or unique, not just from a series standpoint, but in terms of working with us.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's an honor to work with you, and that's the biggest reason why we did this. No, just kidding.
Does anybody have a checkbook? We're going to have to write this out.
No, I think you guys are doing a tremendous job. I mean, your activations have been unbelievable. I mean, what you're doing here this weekend is, we've had many partners throughout the years, and you're right up there with the best of them. The way you do things, everything's first class, everything's done right, and it's more laid back. It's like you can tell you guys are having fun doing what you're doing, which is really cool. So we love being involved with you guys. It's been a great relationship, and hopefully it'll last for a long time.
Hopefully it will. Thank you. Yes, it's great. Raj,
are you going to cry or something?
This is a 30-year partnership, right? No? Isn't it? Raj, let's talk a little bit about what happened today. Just in general, not with our team per se, but I think a lot of people are a bit confused about how the race ended. Can you just talk through the technicality of what actually happened?
Okay, so we ended up under what's called red flag conditions. It's not how we like to finish races. It means that there's been an incident out on the racetrack that the race director has decided it's no longer safe to continue racing. In this case, it was a heavy rain shower and then multiple cars in the wall. We, as a community, we do everything we can to keep a race going because we want to see a result. Nobody likes to get to the end and have no conclusion as to what happened. So they red flagged the race. There is a procedure on how we would restart a race, and that's what we were all hoping for. We were 10 minutes from the end thereabouts, which is, almost a quarter of the race left. So we were thinking, we'll get the car repaired, we'll get back out, and then we'll have maybe a last 2 or 3 lap dash to the end, and that's when it can be super exciting. Unfortunately, the incident was severe enough that part of the track was damaged. So when they'd hit the wall, they'd move some of the barriers back. And so it was going to be a good hour or so before they were able to restart the race, because they can't restart in a condition where the track isn't safe. So they took the decision to conclude the race at that point. It's always a little bit challenging to know, well, who's actually leading at that point. So what they do is they go back to the last lap where they had a green flag condition, and then they say, okay, at that point, this is the result. Frustrating as it might be for all of us that believe we could have done better, felt that we were in a good position to make up some ground. Ironically, in this case, it was the leading 3 cars that crashed. So in other sports, if you cause an incident like that, you get penalized. You lose your time, you lose your position, whatever. In motorsport, it doesn't seem to work that way, which could be right, could be wrong. We can debate that at a later stage. But that's what happened. They went back, and ironically, the guy that was first into the wall was also first on the podium. So,
he was just taking the shortcut.
Funny story around that. Thank goodness no one got hurt. That's the most important thing.
Oh, yeah.
But when they were still figuring out what to do in between the crash and calling it off, I actually talked to one of the Andretti guys in your team. He'll be renamed. His name will be nameless for now. And I said, what's going to happen now? And he looks at me, he's like, I have no idea. This is like, first time for this. And I have no idea.
Second time that
I thought I was talking to Kevin
during a race.
I thought I was talking to Kevin Segnicki at Avalanche. So like, hey, and Kevin's saying, I don't know, I just throw ideas out. You guys figure out what happens after this.
No, keep going. Keep going. Kev, you want a rebuttal or what? No, you good?
He's like he's really tall, but he's actually kind of short right now for some reason.
Somebody's been enjoying happy hour. Okay. So look, we could keep this going all night, but I think what would be cool is let's get the drivers up here. Who has questions for the drivers? Anyone have questions for the drivers? Let's get them up here, guys. Come on up. Let's do a bit of an AMA. No, we can share. Can we get some extra mics for these guys? Do we have any? Come on up. Take a seat. I'll stand. You guys can sit together. I'll tell you, it's pretty unique. Motorsports is interesting because it's one of the few sports where teammates compete against one another. And, I wouldn't say I've been around racing for many years, but Pog, you have, right? How often are drivers friends? Depends on the team. Well, let me ask you guys, Michael. How often is the equation between the drivers great? Honestly.
Well, actually, there's a lot of friendships that happen in the paddock. To be honest with you, so.
This is an unrehearsed panel.
Now myself, if you talk to me about it, I mean, when I was driving, the only friend I actually ever had was Brian Herta, who was a friend of yours in the sport. I never really hung out with any of the other drivers. I never wanted them to get to know me. And because if you get to know me, then you might get to know some of my weaknesses. So,
right. So if you get to know me, you get to know how to beat me. We don't want that happening.
Exactly.
So just watching drivers around the paddocks and other series. But one thing that's been really great to watch is just the way you guys get along and the chemistry you have. You guys are really cute together.
Come on.
All right, so let's open it up. First of all, maybe we could just start with you, Oliver. Tell us a little bit about where you're from. By the way, the only American driver in the series. Let's give it up for that. Yeah. That's okay. We like England too. Don't worry about it. We'll get to that. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you got started, and how you got here.
First of all, thanks for having us. This is my second or third Avalanche House event that I've been to this year, and you guys absolutely knock it out of the park with every single one. And I want to give a shout out to some of our mechanics who's sitting in this row over here who made it out tonight.
Stand up, guys. Stand up. Let's stand up. Stand up. Come on, stand up. Take it back.
Yeah.
So. A quick funny story, I have to interrupt you, but when we first threw our first Avalanche House and we said, well, bring the whole team, bring the mechanics and everybody, and they said, well, are you sure? Like, we don't normally do that. We don't normally invite the whole team to everything. We said, no, absolutely, bring everybody, and it's been great to see you guys every time. You always come and you're always a great addition, so you're always welcome. Thanks. Sorry, Ollie. Back to you. So, how'd you get started?
What was the question? Yes. I started racing go-karts when I was 8 years old, and racing didn't run in the family, kind of stumbled upon it, and made my way up the racing ladder, raced for Michael in 2019, and won the Indy Lights Championship for them, and I've been a part of the Andretti family since, and it's an incredible organization to be a part of, and yeah, to now be racing at one of the highest levels in motorsport and Formula E is with you guys. It's been a privilege. So that's my elevator pitch. Obviously, it took a lot longer to get to that point, but that's the short version.
This must be a tall building. I don't know. All right, that's good. Thank you, Jake. A little bit for you. Tell everybody about yourself, where you're from, and how you got going in this stuff.
Yeah, good evening, everyone, and hope you're having a good time and obviously enjoying the free beer. I'm sure that's what you're all here for. But yeah, obviously, Jake Dennis. I am second year in Formula E. It was my first year last year, and yeah, we had a great season. And yeah, to obviously be now with Andretti and Avalanche has obviously just been a great partnership from the get-go. Really, we had a great start to the season with basically the first race, new team, and yeah, we finished on the podium. So we obviously had high expectations for the rest of the year. It's been obviously up and down, but we've had some really good results. And yeah, generally, like Oliver, you just start off at a young age, 8 years old, and yeah, then just work your way through the junior categories. I never really went to the States. I generally stayed in Europe, and yeah, then just progressed all the way through. I actually moved to like sports cars, which was basically like a road car, just souped up really with big wings, grippy tires, and then I moved back to single seaters, which is like sort of what you see today, like mini Formula One cars. So I've sort of done a bit of a mix and match of everything, and yeah, super happy where I'm at now in Formula E, and yeah, I think it's a really exciting time.
It's great. Well, we love having you guys here. Okay, we're going to open it up for questions. Who's got a question for Oliver, Jake, or actually anybody up on stage? Who wants to go first? Pog, I know you got plenty of questions. You get them answered in BEC. I'll walk back with a mic for anyone who wants to ask. Got one here? All right, Mr. Nick Musalem, everybody.
So how do you prepare for a race like today when you know it might rain, but you're not totally sure it's going to rain, right? Which adds a whole different element. Just how do you prepare for a race like that?
That's a good question. I think one of the biggest things now is the simulators, what we do. Me and Oliver will, before every race week, we're on the simulator in Munich, as that's where it's based at the moment. On Monday, Tuesday, just trying to develop the car as much as possible, improve the software each time. But one of the things you can't do is add rain. So when a situation happened like today, you sort of just gotta wing it. And obviously it can go massively wrong, like we saw today with the front guys. But yeah, it's just a challenge. I think one of the things in motorsport, you just have to freestyle a lot of things. You can never anticipate or predict too many situations, otherwise, yeah, your head will just explode in certain situations. So yeah, you just got to do the best you can. A lot of homework, but at the end of the day, it's you've just got to drive the race car as fast as you can and see how you get on.
It's not too dissimilar from our business, really, where you have to sort of have a plan and things you want to stick to, but you have to be willing to change when the situation changes, right? So it's another great similarity. Another question back here. Hi. Can you tell people who you are and where you're from?
Sure thing. My name is BJ. I am from PAC, LA, and it's just been great to be part of Avalanche since pre-mainnet. So thank you for coming out here. My question is, we see with chess, we see with AlphaGo, we see computers sort of beating human beings. But then we also see the things that actually beat the computers are half human, half computer team. So when you're racing, what's the balance between the two?
Great question.
Between human and computer?
Yeah. Should we tell them that you guys are actually androids? Is this the time? Should we actually let them know?
To kind of parlay off of Jake's last answer, one of the most incredible things about Formula E racing is that it's mainly software-based. All of the setup changes that we do, all the steering wheel adjustments that we do is all software, whether I have oversteer, understeer, whether we're managing battery, trying to get to the end of the race with, to the end of a 45-minute race with a battery that's only meant to go 30 minutes between regeneration and all these things. To answer your question, it's 50-50. The car isn't driving itself. We still have to extract the most we can out of the car, and that's where we come in.
I asked that same question of drivers in different series as well. And the answer that I got was it was something close to 80% for traditional motor racing And then when I asked you guys, I think it was more like, between 50 and 60%. So between 50 and 60% of your effort on the track is actually driving fast. I mean, well, it's all driving fast, but it's incredible just how much technology has become part of the equation.
I have a question. Oliver, I see you're wearing a Whoop. What's your resting heart rate? And when you're driving, what is your heart rate?
It's, I think the average during a normal Formula E race, which was not today. Today was not normal. I was on a completely different strategy, trying to save energy, hoping for the race to restart. So I was a bit more relaxed out there driving by myself. But on a normal race, when you're in the heat of the, fighting for the top 10, it's an average of about 170 sustained for 45 minutes. So resting about 60, I think, around there. Don't ask what my sleep score was last night.
Oh, that's pretty exciting, both inside and outside the car, I guess. We have a question right here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Hello, Juliana Chiavitti from Toronto, Canada. I'm your automotive woman. Subscribe, like, share. Thank you. Just a follow-up to what the other gentleman said in the back, how hard has the transition been from either sports car racing or open wheel to Formula E? Because the perception is that it's supposed to be easier. However, we see Formula One drivers, IndyCar drivers, have challenges. They struggle. And that was amazing.
That's a good question. Yeah, I think Formula E is honestly one of the most difficult championships to just come into and perform. I think one of the reasons for that is because it's electric. These cars are so advanced on software. If the software is not quite right, the car does things it shouldn't do. Like, you're telling it to do one thing, and if the software is telling it to do another, you then just get this weird combination. And then you've also got the other side, is that it's basically all in one day. Like, this weekend we had the luxury of driving on Friday, and then you have the overnight analysis, and then you can do Saturday morning, and you've had basically a night to sleep on it. But normally you just wake up Saturday morning, jump in the car, and you've got FP1, FP2, qualifying in a race all in around about 5 hours. So you really don't have much time to analyze the data, see where you can improve. And obviously the cars are just so different to anything else what you sort of learn your career in. I think especially for you, Oliver, coming from IndyCar, which is probably it's the best series in America, and it's probably the most raw, most natural motorsport there is, even compared to Formula One. Those cars are ruthless, they're just pure horsepower, and they're super physical, whereas this is such a different beast. It's super technical, completely different techniques of the way you brake, the way you turn, and yeah, I think I've taken a big step forward from last year to this year. We were super successful last year, like I said, but you're just forever learning, and because it's so much software based, the car never stays the same. It's just always being developed, so you have to sort of develop with that. Got anything to add?
Nailed it.
Nailed it. All right, I think we got time for a couple more questions. Anyone else? Yeah, right here, Xander.
Hi, I've got two questions. Jake, do you drive with or without your rings?
I drive without because I can't afford the fines. That's really the biggest thing. I'm not Lewis Hamilton, who can just pay 50 grand every time he wears a ring. So yeah, I take them off.
And this one is maybe better for Michael or Roger. How much money did we see shredded on the track today? Like, one of those cars is about how much? And then were those first three cars, were they totaled?
I don't want to answer that. I'll let him answer that because it hurts when I think about it.
This was a pretty expensive day for Formula E. I'm not sure I've seen a day quite like this. That you're probably looking at €1 million per car. There are price caps on that, but when you start factoring in how much money is invested in the development of those cars, and you have to amortize that, so we probably have got 2 or 3 teams that are building brand new cars tonight. They hope to have those ready for first thing tomorrow morning, so 7 a.m. in the morning. So I think there's a few people not going to get much sleep. We saw the Mercedes guys bringing in boxes of pizza, which usually means that the mechanics have got a long night ahead of them. Yeah, that was an expensive day. So yeah, there's no way around it.
You guys, your cars are fine.
Yeah, we actually came away pretty luckily.
And if I'm actually correct,
yeah, our guys are
are
actually
here.
still sat here. So
No pizza for our boys.
and
there's no pizza for them.
Avalanche House for the Avalanche team.
And little information here. I think the number 1 and 2 cars who got wrecked were actually sponsored by Algorand. So there's a little bittersweet there.
Algorand got wrecked. There's actually something funny, but one of the guys came up. So Algorand are an associate sponsor, not a title sponsor like us, but Algorand are an associate sponsor for the Envision Racing team, whose garage, is that how I say? Garage, whatever, is right next to ours today. And one of the guys, when I was over there with Kevin this morning, it was quite funny because when they got a better qualifying time for us, one of the guys came over and tapped Kevin on the chest and said, "We flipped you today." And he was trolling him in real life and also on Twitter. But it was all in good humor, so we look forward to beating them in Seoul. Right? Kevin has a question. I'm actually really excited about this one.
Kevin, intern at Ava Labs. So I actually have a question, I guess, for Roger, Michael, anybody else that wants to answer. So it's interesting to see how limited the regulations are on Formula E. I mean, at least to me, the Formula E can get way above out there, like the amount of optimization of the software, the amount of optimization of the aerodynamics, on the powertrain, everything seems super limited. It seems like it can go easily 2x, 3x from here. I guess the battery would just get destroyed, but still, like, where do you see Formula E in 5 years from here, as far as like because people love Formula One for one reason: those things go very fast, or like, you know, the number go really far out. So and it's much cooler to say these things go vroom and very loud than it is to say these things are very technical and software, you know, oriented and so on. So is Formula E going to get to the point where it's like more about the muscle and the just sheer power of the software and the engine? Or is it always going to be more of like, we're the technical guys and we're never really going to just push the boundaries of the engines?
I think I've got this one. Formula E has restricted development in certain areas for really good reasons. Formula E is all about the development of the EV powertrain. It's not about aerodynamics, it's not about brakes, it's not about the chassis. The focus is on EV because that's where Formula E and we as the Andretti organization believe the technology should be. It should be about developing the future road cars, and the future is electric, regardless whether we like petrol engines or not. So I think Formula E has, as John was talking about earlier, has evolved. You know, the 2 cars down to 1 car with the battery technology developing. We've got a new generation, the Gen 3 car, which some of you may have seen or heard about, is coming for next season. That's another leap forward in technology. It's a lighter car, it's a smaller car, it's a faster car. So Formula E is taking progressive steps. What we found in the early days of Formula E is that we were actually chasing the pinnacle of the technology, particularly around batteries, around electric motors. So we were not being held back by regulations. We were being held back by the advancements in technology. And that's really where we want to be, on that cutting edge. And what we're starting to see is that trickle-down effect from racing into the road cars. I mean, we talk about, you know, race on Sunday, sell on Monday. We talk about the technology transfer. That's a really hard story to actually believe in other forms of motorsport. But in Formula E, I believe it's very genuine. And what we're seeing is that technology coming into the road cars that we're going to be driving today and tomorrow that's available in the showrooms. And I think the relevance of Formula E compared to other forms of motorsport is quite unique. And that's the message that we want to talk about.
Got it, thank you.
So just to give some context, what is the top speed of the Formula E car today?
Probably here about 130 miles an hour. But
on this track?
On this track, and we're talking about racing on city streets. This is not racing on a big, wide open FIA super billiard smooth circuit that Formula One races on. This is bumpy. I mean, if you walked across the track this evening, I mean, there's drain covers, there's manhole covers, there's, all sorts of stuff going on the track.
I mean, that's dodgy on a scooter at 17 miles an hour. I can't imagine what it's like in a race car at 150. But no, the true raw top speed of Formula E car in perfect conditions, what's it, like 205? 200?
We're under 200 miles an hour, but
Okay.
I think the next generation of car will be pushing 200 miles an hour.
Yeah, so that's the benchmark. So next season, John had mentioned it earlier, going from 1,800 to 1,600 pounds. So taking 200 pounds out of the chassis and adding about 100 kilowatts. So what's it going from 250 to 350 max? So that should bump up the speed quite a lot, right? What are we thinking the top speed will be for season 9 coming up next year?
I think, well, a more interesting statistic actually is how much faster on a per lap basis. So we're actually thinking the cars could be 3 to 4 seconds a lap faster than the current car. And that's huge. That's a huge improvement in performance.
If you think about the top 10 positions in qualifying are separated by how many seconds?
We're down to tenths or hundredths of a second.
Tenths or hundredths of a second. So 3 to 4 seconds is quite a lot. And if you're trying to visualize that, I think the stat that I always try to keep in mind is that at 200 miles an hour, you're covering a football field every second. That's pretty fast. No time for texting while driving, right? But yet these guys have to operate a really advanced computer. Anyway, look, I think thank you, gentlemen, for spending your time. You guys have been working hard all day, and I know you're going to get back to the books. The life of a race car driver, my biggest disappointment in getting to know the team is that it's not really what I thought it was. You guys actually work really hard. You come off the track, and you go straight into the books. So there's no partying like a rock star. I guess that's why they say rock star, not racing car driver. Anyway, nonetheless, thank you guys for your attention, for interrupting your happy hour. Big round of applause.